About 32 million workers work with and are potentially exposed to one or more chemical hazards. There are approximately 650,000 existing chemical products and hundreds of new ones being introduced annually. Chemical exposure may cause or contribute to many serious health effects such as heart ailments, central nervous system damage, kidney and lung damage, sterility, cancer, burns, and rashes. Some chemicals may also be safety hazards and have the potential to cause fires and explosions and other serious accidents. Chemical hazard communication is one of the most frequently cited OSHA standards. A hazardous chemical is any chemical which is a physical or health hazard. The Hazard Communication, or HazCom standard, establishes uniform requirements to make sure that the hazards of all chemicals imported into, produced, or used in U.S. workplaces are evaluated, and that this hazard information is transmitted to affected employers and exposed employees. The HazCom standard is different from other OSHA health rules because it covers all hazardous chemicals. The rule also incorporates a downstream flow of information, which means that producers of chemicals have the primary responsibility for generating and disseminating information, whereas users of chemicals must obtain the information and transmit it to their employees. The purpose of the Hazard Communication Standard is to ensure that employers and employees know about work hazards and how to protect themselves so that the incidence of illnesses and injuries due to hazardous chemicals is reduced. The employer is responsible for identifying and listing hazardous chemicals in their workplaces. The employer must obtain material safety data sheets and labels for each hazardous chemical, if not provided by the manufacturer, importer, or distributor. The employer must implement a written HazCom program and communicate hazard information to employees through labels, material safety data sheets, and formal training programs. The employee is responsible for completing the required HazCom training, learning the material safety data sheets, and following all requirements that apply to hazardous chemicals. A written HazCom program is required because it ensures that all employers receive the information they need to inform and train their employees, and provides necessary hazard information to employees. The written HazCom program describes container labeling, material safety data sheets, and employee training for each workplace, lists the hazardous chemicals used in the workplace, and makes information regarding hazards and protective measures available to workers, visitors, or other employers on site. The employer is also required to describe how they will inform employees of the hazards of non-routine tasks, for example, cleaning reactor vessels, and the hazards associated with chemicals and unlabeled pipes. Each container of hazardous chemicals entering the workplace must be labeled or marked with the identity of the chemical, appropriate hazard warnings, and the name and address of the responsible party. Consumer products having labels meeting requirements of the Consumer Product Safety Act do not have to have additional labeling under the HazCom standard. Various other chemical products, for example, pesticides, foods, drugs, cosmetics, beverage alcohols, that are subject to labeling laws administered by other federal agencies are also exempt from the labeling requirements of the HazCom standard. The hazard warning can be any type of message, picture, or symbol that provides information on the hazards of the chemical and the targeted organs affected, if applicable. Labels must be legible, in English, and prominently displayed. Material safety data sheets are prepared by the chemical manufacturer or importer and describe physical hazards, such as fire and explosion, health hazards, such as signs of exposure, routes of exposure, precautions for safe handling and use, emergency and first aid procedures, and control measures. The material safety data sheets must be in English and include information regarding the specific chemical identity and common names. Also, the data sheets must provide information about the physical and chemical characteristics, health effects, exposure limits, presence of known cancer-causing substances, and identification, including name, address, and a telephone number, of the organization responsible for preparing the sheet. Employers must make all material safety data sheets readily accessible to employees in their work area. Training is required for employees who are exposed to hazardous chemicals in their work area at the time of initial assignment and whenever a new hazard is introduced into their work area. Training is not satisfied solely by giving the employee the data sheets to read. An employer's training program is to be a forum for explaining to employees not only the hazards of the chemicals in their work area, but also how to use the information generated in the hazard communication program. This can be accomplished in many ways: audiovisuals, classroom instruction, or interactive video, and should include an opportunity for employees to ask questions to ensure that they understand the information presented to them. In summary, OSHA's Hazard Communication Standard is based on the concept that employees have both a need and a right to know the hazards and identities of the chemicals they are exposed to when working. Employees also need to know what protective measures are available to prevent adverse effects from occurring. This has been a production of Federal Safety Solutions. For more information, please visit fssamerica.com.